You're watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. From Toronto, Ontario, I'm Catherine Bullock. Assalamu alaikum and greetings of peace. Today, a conversation about does your childhood affect your parenting? But first, some news headlines. Trudeau announces economic sanctions, additional troops amid Ukraine crisis. Halal financing program aids Albertan Homebuyers. Muslim family donates $2.5 million to healthcare centre in Ontario. Hindu militia attacks Muslims and police in Karnataka, India. And now, the details. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced economic sanctions on Russia yesterday after Moscow acknowledged Ukraine's regions of Donetsk and Luhansk as independent. Canadians are hereby banned from making financial deals with the two supposed states. The government will sanction Russian parliament members who voted for the acknowledgement. Trudeau also authorized 460 additional armed forces, along with a frigate and maritime patrol aircraft. The United States, the European Union, Germany, and Britain have also announced economic sanctions, as weeks of negotiations failed to find a diplomatic solution. Canadian Halal Financial Corporation is a new organisation that provides halal financing for home purchases. Based in Edmonton and years in the making, the organisation works with the Al Rashid Mosque's Fatwa Committee, which reviews each application and transaction. Al Rashid's Imam, Mahmoud Omar, told local media sources that the plan was created by consulting experts and scholars on Islamic principles and Canadian law. Islamic law prohibits interest on loans, which means that many Muslims are stuck for years as renters. Sajjad Ibrahim and his family have made history with the largest single family donation to a healthcare centre in Brampton, Ontario. The Ibrahims donated $2.5 million, an amount matched by the Orlando Corporation, making for a total of $5 million for the new centre. The centre is now named Sajjad Ibrahim and Family Urgent Care Centre. Ibrahim says that he wanted to give back to the city and Canada for being good to him and his employees. He says that with the city's population growth, he is looking forward to the centre becoming Brampton's second hospital. The Indian state, where Muslim girls with hijab are being banned from entering schools, has now turned violent against Muslims. On Sunday, at least 20 people were injured and around 50 vehicles torched during a funeral procession. A Hindu extremist who, police say, was an active Bajrang Dal militia member, was involved in attacks targeting Muslims in the area. The US government identified Bajrang Dal as a youth wing of a militant religious outfit. The Home Minister responsible for the hijab ban attended the funeral of the Hindu militiaman. The RSS militia called Bajrang Dal then organised more attacks on Muslim-owned homes, businessmen, and vehicles. And that's it for the news. One of the truisms in life is that parenting does not come with a manual. And then we find out that our childhood might affect our parenting. So today, to explain the situation, we have our regular guest, Zaira Eppard, the Director of Religious Education from Sound Vision Foundation. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum assalam. How are you, Kathy?
I'm fine, alhamdulillah. And you?
Alhamdulillah. Good.
In our regular interviews, you are sharing with us important stories that you are putting out in your weekly newsletter. And today you want us to focus on, does our childhood affect our parenting?
The answer to that question is a resounding yes. And it affects it in many different ways. The Muslim Home Parenting Newsletter is a weekly publication, and in this issue, we focused on 5 different articles. We talked about trauma, we talked about becoming a mindful parent, we talked about preparing our children for adulthood and beyond. And we talked about giving parents resources to figure out what type of parent they are. Parenting is, or childhood is where we find out what is normal, whether our families are functional or dysfunctional. In those settings, we learn about gender roles, we learn about responses to anger, we learn about creativity, we learn about faith. And how to worship. And so these are very important life lessons, but there can also be additional things that come from our experience, and those sometimes are related to trauma.
I'll ask you about that in a minute. We muddle along as parents doing our best. There are parenting books. We get advice from all around us. It feels a little bit scary to think that our muddling along might be having an effect on our children.
So it can be scary. And I love the way you started the program saying there is no manual that comes with parenting. That's absolutely true. We know, though, that Allah is the best of planners. And in our responsibilities that we get with this blessing of parenting, we get many challenges too. And there are tons of tests and trials along the way. We can do the best we can, and we can identify resources that help us along the way. That's what we're trying to do with this new parenting newsletter. We started back in July, and we've already published 28 issues, in fact.
Well, congratulations. Let's talk then about trauma. First of all, tell us what it is.
There are three general types of trauma. Trauma is defined as an emotional response to any event. There's an acute trauma, which is the response to a single event. There is chronic trauma, which happens when there is prolonged abuse or violence of some kind. And then there's complex trauma, which is a combination of prolonged trauma and also multiple different kinds of events. Statistics have shown that over 60% of parents report that they've experienced one type of what's called an adverse childhood experience. We're learning lots more about that with different fields of sociology and psychology. And when a child experiences trauma, they often make sense of it in whatever way they can. Remember, this is where they learn normal. So if their normal household is dysfunctional, that is still normal for a child. And in trying to grapple with some of these challenges, they make sense of it, even pushing elements of it completely out of their conscious mind. If this kind of trauma that is internalized or is in some way not dealt with appropriately, that can translate into effectively carrying it into your own parenting. And this is a problem for everyone in the family, the parents and the children.
So you might be talking about, the sad case if a child is sexually abused by their parent or verbally abused or physically assaulted. But then you're also talking about collective traumas. I mean, a lot of Muslims a lot of Muslims in Canada and the US are immigrants coming as refugees or having immigrated. There's war, civil war, terrorism going on back home. They arrive with those traumas. I'm guessing that's the word to use.
Yes.
And then there's the post 9/11 environment where
Yes.
Muslims face constant daily microaggressions, discrimination, even up to the macro ones of the family that was, killed in London, Ontario by an anti-Muslim truck driver.
Yes. And this creates a level of stress, of chronic stress, actually, that can be challenging in terms of how you handle your own emotional responses to anything. We know that childhood is a time where kids try many things out, and there is sometimes not a day that goes by without challenge of some sort. In order to meet those challenges, you have to yourself not be triggered by what you're seeing in front of you. In our article about mindful parenting, there were 4 different tips that were identified. First one, and I wanted to talk about this specifically, was know yourself. You have to understand how your childhood might impact your parenting style. Another article, which was actually an excerpt from a book by Nargis Naqvi called The Perfect Muslim Child, talks about the different types of parenting styles. We have to reflect on the way that we usually handle normal events. And then we also have to reflect on how we handle challenging events. And remember, we're setting the stage for the interactions we have for our children, but we're also creating their idea of normal so that it's likely that whatever you're doing in your parenting will carry over into their parenting too.
Knowing yourself can actually be a very scary thing to go through. I think you used the word suppress at the beginning when some traumas are so difficult, but even just ordinary character flaws that we don't want to admit up to. So it's good that you're bringing this to our attention. Is this a unique focus? There are a lot of parenting workshops in the Muslim community at the mosques and things. Are these issues on the radar? I don't remember hearing them being mentioned.
I think that we're just starting to get into a level of science about childhood development, brain development. This field of cognitive psychology is growing in this area. And the use of the term ACE or adverse childhood experiences is starting to be used more frequently in education settings. So while it is not new to science or parenting, it could be new to the Muslim community. And sometimes what we need to do is provide resources so that people can name the challenges that we're facing. And again, we have a lot of resources that are available to us, both within the Muslim community and beyond. One of our articles that was about trauma was written by a sister named Noreen Ahmed, who herself was a child that was parented by a mother who had severe mental illness. She's created an organization called SEMA, that was her mom's name, and there are a lot of resources we put online so that parents can find out where to go to get help in this area. And so, again, the newsletter is about educating, it's about giving insight, and it's also about identifying resources.
So at the end, I'll have to try and remember to ask you for a link or something if someone wants to look it up. But in the meantime, just as we wrap up, I know that Sound Vision, your newsletters are always really good with practical tips and recommendations. And you mentioned one already, but is there another one that you'd like to share with us, an important one?
Yes. What you have to do in addition to knowing yourself is you have to understand how a child's brain works. There are things that we can expect of our children that are age appropriate, and sometimes our expectations are not appropriate. We might want a response from them or a consistency of behavior from them that is really not reasonable. It's unrealistic. And that's based on brain development and science. Then there are opportunities for you to, again, get more resources and forge a plan for yourself. All of us as parents can identify times when we didn't have an appropriate or productive response. Think about those instances. Think about what we can do differently so that if it happens again, that our child makes us angry or frustrated, and we know that will happen, then we can maybe pull together more skills and more tools to put in our toolbox to handle it in a better way in the future.
Parents, we have to wrap it up, but do you have a website that you'd like to share where we could find this newsletter if we want?
So that's a challenging thing right now because the newsletter is new. It doesn't have a particular place that it's housed. All of the articles I referenced, though, are on our Sound Vision website, and they are right now, because it's the latest issue, housed on the first page. So that would be soundvision.com.
All right. Thank you. And thank you for joining us on the show today. Hopefully we can all self-reflect and become better parents. Thank you for watching. See you next time, inshallah.